So let's take a look at one of the, or let's say two of the most basic components in µsoma. So we'll talk about buttons and we'll talk about log. So these are the two sort of most basic components that you can use in µsoma to play with µsoma and so on. So obviously we have hints here, so by pressing open paren, you get this list of all available nodes, and you can scroll through it using page up and down. So you can see I'm pressing page up and down, and you can scroll through this list. And there are several components. We're going to look through some of them, not all of them obviously, it's a bit too much. So obviously the first component that interests us is button, and you can see the button is described as a node that triggers a pulse when clicked. Whatever that means right now, it's not really important. So the first argument of the first thing that you have to pass to the button is a message of some kind, and if you scroll again using page up and down, you can see that it persists through all versions of button, or their so-called variants of button. You can see message is somewhere there all the time, like always you can see message there. So message is basically what the button is going to send to the outside world when it is clicked. So let's say our message is going to be a hello world. Then the button we still have the same number of variants, so we will use the most basic. This first variant is the most basic variant of the button, so we need to type 2, and then where do we want this pulse, this message to go? Let's call this messages. You can call it whatever you want. This @ sign is a syntax shorthand for an edge, and again right now there is little point in worrying about what this all means. Rather, you just have to know that you have to use this @ symbol to prefix any edge. Now you can press space to quit like that, and then we are left only with two variants. You can see there are two variants left. The first variant is one that accepts a mailbox, and this is the one we are going to use. And the second one is continuing after the mailbox with waiting, and then another edge, another pulse edge AX. So this pulse edge AX is used for acknowledgements that some kind of action that this button performed was indeed performed. And so basically, speaking very, very briefly, this is used to implement loading. So let's say you press a button and you want the button to wait until a certain action is done, and so this waiting AX thing is used for that. It's feedback that the button can receive about the action that it initiated. Regardless though, we are going to stick with this first variant, and you can see we need the mailbox dict through which µsoma will communicate with the button. So µsoma will have to communicate with this button to indicate whether or not the button was pressed, etc. So the moment I leave this button, which you can do with space or arrow or anything like that, it turns into a clickable button. So if I click it, nothing happens right now, but in order for something to happen, remember that we have this messages edge, and we need someone to listen to that edge now, and this is when the log node comes in handy. So if I type log, you can see this log node appears, and this log node shows last n pulses received, and this is just what we want here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add messages, the edge that we've written in the button there, so the button will send to this edge its messages. So now we will log these messages in certain storage. Now what this storage is it is a dictionary at this point. So now if I press hello world, you can see hello world is sent to the messages edge, and it is received by this log node, and this log node basically displays the message. The second variant of button that is of interest is the variant where we override the where we override the caption. So I'm not going to cover the waiting variants, but I'm going to cover this one as well. So this variant of button allows you to show a different caption. So here you can see in this button we have the caption equal to the message. So if I quit, you can see we have the caption here and we have the message here, and they're all the same. Now if I use this second variant of button, the longer one with as, what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to specify the caption. Let's say send hello world. Then we'll be able to use as, and then after as we type the message that this button is going to send. Let's say hello world again. And then we will use to, like in the first variant. Then we will specify where this button will send its message. It's going to send it to messages. And then we will need to specify the mailbox through which µsoma, the graphical user interface, will communicate with the button. So now we have two buttons here, as you can see, and we can press send hello world, and this also sends hello world. So the message is hello world, the caption here is send hello world. Now with this mailbox, one other interesting example is how is this communication actually happening? When I say like Soma communicates with a button, like what is this communication about? Well, we can sort of communicate with the button ourselves by using the mailbox of the button and by putting a message there by hand. So what we can do is we can put the press message, and the press message is understood by the button as a button press. And so when I leave, like immediately when I leave this message using space, you can see the press is consumed and the button thinks it was pressed, and so it sends its message. So this is what I mean when I say that Soma communicates with the button. What it does is when you click the button, like visually using your cursor and mouse, what happens is it puts into that mailbox the same press message that we can type manually, and this is treated as a button press. So there is not much else interesting right now at this very basic level. Some other simple nodes that everybody would understand, especially people familiar with HTML, is nodes that are concerned with text. So you can do very basic stuff such as h1. So you can see there is a whole selection of these h nodes here. And what we can do is we can use the simple variant of h1 to show this big text. Now, one of the interesting things is we can use cells. I'm not going to talk about cells right now, but so cells, cell nodes allow to store data in the program. So you can see it stores a term inside itself and acts as a source of const signal. So what you can use cells for is basically storing anything. So let's say you will store hello world in this cell. So this cout is also an edge, but it's a different kind of edge. It's a constant edge, which means this hello world is not sent in bursts like we have with button, for instance. When we click the button, there is a burst of activity and the message of the button is sent. Now with cells and constant signals in general, we have a constant signal, so it is maintained. There are no bursts, it is maintained. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this cell to actually store something in this case. So let's call it, let's call it message. Now let's say we want our button to send this message. So what we are going to do is we are going to replace, let's say, this caption here with message, at message. Now you can see this does not work because I think I didn't implement it. Let's leave it at that, right? I think the second variant should work though. I think caption doesn't work. Yes, I forgot to implement it. So we can use this as message here. This will work. So if I send hello world now, you can see we still get hello world. I can edit this cell, let's say by world. And then if I quit this using spaces, send hello world, you can see it sends by world, just as we expect. An interesting thing with cells is that we can use them, as you can see from this hint here. If I use page down, this second variant here shows that we can use a cell const to now that's weird, I forgot to, yeah, we need to not hit the buttons here if there's a hint on top, but basically the idea here is that you can provide cells to nodes such as h1, like the header node, and so it will show the message. So if I do this, you can see it shows our message by world. If I modify the message here, modify the cell, you can see since there is no longer a cell that is valid, this goes back to code. But if I like modify it, like I don't know, hello here, you can see the moment I leave, the text is able to render here. We can create more of these headers. We can create h2, for example, which is a slightly smaller header, and so on. At the lowest level right now, we have text. Now text would be p, but right now it is not p because of certain conflicts. So right now we have to use this. Now this similarly would work like so. Now you can style these things in a tailwind-like manner by using the style attribute. Just type style, then colon. This gives you a key value pair with style as the key. You can then in quotes here, because this is a string, write for example text blue 500 to make it blue, close the quote, hit enter to escape from the pair, and now if you quit using space, for example, you can see that the text becomes blue. Now obviously this is all reactive, so if I for example want to let's say I want to press how should we do it? Again, we can write a simple counter as an example. So we can use cells for counters. So instead of having our message here, let's have a count. So you can see everybody now displays this count 0, and we can for instance use button, or I mean this button won't work as I have said, unfortunately, because I forgot to implement that, but we can use this button here. We can use @message here again, and we will send it to increment. This is another variant of a counter. I have implemented a counter already differently, but this is a different way to do it. So we will do this, and we will copy the button here using "V", which is a handy shortcut to do just that, and we'll do decrement. So decrement as message to decrements. Now let's call this in plural because this is a convention that is very handy. Then let's call a transform. Now again, I'm not going to describe what these things do, but we'll transform increments to messages, and the body is going to be plus underscore, which means whatever comes to increments edge, plus 1, which means increment. Copy this guy. We'll have decrements. And here the only thing that is interesting is that this thing should be minus. So now what we can do is we can basically use this to our advantage. So if I click increment here, you can see we'll get 1 in our log. If I click decrement, we'll get -1. We'll use the changes node, or not the changes node, I always confuse these. The latest node allows you to convert a pulse signal, which we get here on the messages edge, to a constant signal which we require on the cell edge. And it talks to a cell basically and convinces the cell that it should change its content to whatever is on this pulse. So I'm going to do is when the latest @messages @message. And then if I increment, you can see that our message changes here, and along with the message all texts change. And I can increment here, and I can decrement here. So again, this is a very, very small example of what µsoma is able to do. I'm trying to stick to very, very simple nodes at this moment. We can also use a horizontal separator, HR. You can see it allows us to separate things out a little bit. So yeah, this is like just a little showcase of how interactive programming can be if you really if you put a lot of work into it. But yes, so that's it for now.